The referee brushes snow off his sleeve, squints through the blizzard, and makes a call that nobody in that stadium, nobody in the entire country, has ever seen before. A call so bizarre, so controversial, so impossibly perfect for the moment that it would send lawyers, league executives, and furious coaches scrambling to rewrite the very laws of professional football. And the man who benefited from it? He wasn't even supposed to be playing that night. What unfolded in the next 4 minutes of that frozen January game would divide football fans for over 2 decades, spark one of the most heated debates in sports history, and force the NFL to do something it had never done before. Admit that a rule on its own books had just decided the outcome of a playoff game. But here is what nobody talks about. The rule they used that night had been sitting dormant in the NFL rulebook for over 50 years, forgotten, buried, until one desperate official dug it up in the middle of a snowstorm and changed everything. This is the story of the snowball. And once you hear all of it, every twist, every frozen detail, you will never watch a football game the same way again. January 19th, 2002, Foxborough, Massachusetts. The temperature is 9 degrees Fahrenheit. The wind chill pushes it below zero. And a nor'easter has been dumping snow on Gillette Stadium since late afternoon, burying the field under a thick white blanket that makes it almost impossible to tell a yard line from the end zone. This is not football weather. This is survival weather. The New England Patriots, 11-5 on the season, are hosting the Oakland Raiders in the AFC Divisional Playoff. The Raiders are a powerhouse, deep, experienced, physical, led by head coach John Gruden and a roster full of Pro Bowlers. Most analysts gave the Patriots almost no chance going in, but nobody told the Patriots that. The Patriots are quarterbacked that night by a second-year player named Tom Brady. And even that sentence needs context, because Tom Brady in January of 2002 is not the Tom Brady that history remembers. He is not yet a legend. He is not yet a dynasty. He is a kid from Michigan who was a 6th-round draft pick, who started the season as a backup, who took over from an injured Drew Bledsoe and somehow guided this team to the playoffs. He has promise. He has composure. But nobody, and I mean nobody, knows yet what he is about to become. And on this particular night, in this particular blizzard, with the Raiders leading 13-10 in the fourth quarter, it looks like his Cinderella story might be ending right here in the snow. The Patriots get the ball with just over 2 minutes to play. No timeouts. Down by 3. The field is a disaster. Players are slipping. The ball is wet and heavy. Every breath turns to vapor in the frozen air. Brady drops back, feels pressure, scrambles to his left, cocks his arm to throw, and then contact. Raiders linebacker Greg Biekert strips the ball. It tumbles into the snow. Oakland recovers. Game over. Season over. Brady's first playoff run done. The Raiders begin to celebrate. The Gillette Stadium crowd goes silent. That particular kind of silence that only comes when an entire stadium absorbs a gut punch at the same time. And then something strange happens. The officials huddle. They talk. They talk for what feels like an eternity. They wave off the celebration. They put on the headsets and make a call to the replay booth. And then the referee, Walt Coleman, walks towards the microphone. He says 4 words that will echo through NFL history forever. He says, "The ruling on the field has been reversed. Incomplete pass. New England retains possession." And the stadium? It does not explode. It does not roar. It goes into a stunned, confused, disbelieving silence. Because nobody, not the fans, not the players, not the coaches on the sideline, not the television commentators, not the millions watching at home. Nobody fully understands what just happened. Here is where the story gets truly mind-blowing. The rule Walt Coleman cited that night is called the tuck rule. And the tuck rule states, in essence, that if a quarterback has begun his throwing motion, even if he then pulls the ball back toward his body, the ball is still legally considered a forward pass attempt, which means if he loses the ball during that motion, it is not a fumble. It is an incomplete pass. On paper, the rule makes a certain kind of sense. Protect the quarterback, protect the integrity of the passing game. But here is what makes it so staggering, so genuinely jaw-dropping. The tuck rule had been in the NFL rulebook since 1990, 3 years. And in 3 years of professional football, it had almost never been prominently invoked. It was not a rule players practiced around. It was not a rule coaches built their defenses to account for. It existed in the margins, on page 40-something of a massive legal document that defined the sport, and it had been sleeping there quietly until Walt Coleman woke it up on the most important night of Tom Brady's career. Now, here is the question I want you to sit with, and I genuinely want your answer in the comments. If you are John Gruden on that sideline, if you are the head coach who just watched your team recover what every eye in the stadium saw as a clear fumble, and then watched a referee erase it with an obscure rule, do you believe in your heart that the right call was made? Or do you believe that the NFL, consciously or not, protected its most marketable young star in the most convenient moment possible? Drop your answer below, because that question haunted the league for years. The Raiders are apoplectic. Charles Woodson, the cornerback who forced the play, is screaming on the sideline. Gruden looks like a man who has just been told gravity has been suspended. The Raiders players stand on the field in disbelief, watching the Patriots line up and continue driving. And here is the thing. New England does not just survive the moment, they convert. Adam Vinatieri, playing in conditions that would make most kickers simply refuse to take the field, lines up for a 45-yard field goal in a full blizzard. Snow is falling so hard that the line of scrimmage is barely visible. The holder catches a wet snap, places the ball, and Vinatieri, this man is made of something the rest of us simply are not, drives the kick straight through the uprights. Tied at 13, the game goes to overtime. And in overtime, Vinatieri does it again. A 23-yard field goal. Patriots win. Patriots advance. And 6 weeks later, Tom Brady is holding a Super Bowl trophy 6 weeks after that controversial fumble that was not a fumble. 6 weeks after a rule that nobody remembered suddenly decided a playoff game. Here is mind-blowing moment number 2. After the Super Bowl, after the confetti, after the celebration, the NFL did something almost without precedent. They acknowledged the controversy directly. Commissioner Paul Tagliabue convened a competition committee meeting that offseason specifically to address the tuck rule. The committee voted, and their conclusion? The rule was correct. The call was correct. They stood by it. But they also knew, they had to know, that the rule was broken. Because a rule that generates this much confusion, this much controversy, this much outrage, is not a good rule. And yet, they kept it on the books. They kept it for over a decade. The tuck rule survived in the NFL rulebook until 2013. 11 more years of this awkward, misunderstood regulation, sitting in the shadows, being cited occasionally, causing occasional confusion, but never again detonating with quite the same explosive force as it did on that January night in Foxborough. And then, in 2013, the owners voted to eliminate it. 79% in favor of repeal. The tuck rule was dead. Gone from the sport it had briefly hijacked, gone from the books. But never ever gone from the memory of Raiders fans, who to this day refer to January 19th, 2002, not as a loss, but as a theft. Now let us pull back and consider the full weight of what that single call produced. Here is mind-blowing moment number 3. And this one is going to stop you cold. At the time of the Tuck Rule game, Tom Brady had 0 Super Bowl rings. He was an unproven second-year quarterback with a lot of potential and a lot of doubters. The Raiders, meanwhile, were one of the most complete teams in the AFC. They were favored, they had Woodson, they had Tim Brown, they had Jerry Rice. Yes, Jerry Rice in the final years of his legendary career. If the Tuck Rule call goes the other way, if that play is ruled a fumble and Oakland takes a knee, the Raiders almost certainly win that game. They go on to face the Pittsburgh Steelers in the AFC Championship. And if Oakland wins that game, which, based on how they were playing, was a very real possibility, the Raiders go to Super Bowl 36 in New Orleans, not the Patriots. Oakland, what does that mean? It means no dynasty, no 6 Super Bowl rings, no GOAT debate, no Brady era, the most celebrated run in NFL history, arguably the most dominant dynasty in professional football over the last 25 years. May have been born not from superior talent, not from superior coaching, not from superior preparation, but from a single play reviewed by a single official under a single rule that almost nobody knew existed. The butterfly effect of that blizzard night in Foxborough is almost incomprehensible, and the men who lived through it on the losing side never forgot. Tim Brown, years later, would sit down in interviews and speak about the Tuck Rule game with the kind of quiet devastation that only comes when you have had decades to process something and still cannot make peace with it. He called it the most painful loss of his career. And Tim Brown played for 18 years. He went to 9 Pro Bowls. He is in the Hall of Fame. And his most painful memory is not an injury. It is not a bad performance. It is 4 words from a referee in a snowstorm. The ruling on the field has been reversed. Think about the stadium itself that night. Gillette Stadium in the early years, still feeling new, still earning its identity as a fortress. The snow falling in thick curtains under the stadium lights, turning the whole scene into something that felt more like a dream than a football game. Players losing their footing on every cut. Coaches pacing the sideline in parkas. The yardage markers barely visible. Adam Vinatieri warming his kicking leg in conditions that made the whole idea of a 45-yard field goal feel almost absurd. And yet he made it. And the crowd, Foxborough crowd, one of the most passionate in football, going from grief to confusion to disbelief to euphoria in the span of about 4 minutes. That is the emotional range of a lifetime packed into a single quarter of football. After the game, after the overtime celebration, Brady would say that the team never lost faith, that they believed, even when the fumble happened, when they thought the fumble happened, that the defense would get them the ball back. The composure of a 24-year-old in those 4 minutes, in those conditions, after losing the ball and watching the Raiders celebrate, and then getting the ball back and driving for the field goal. That composure told you something. It told you that this kid was not like other kids. It told you that the pressure, the cold, the chaos, none of it was going to touch him the way it would touch most people. And maybe that is the deepest story underneath the Tuck Rule controversy. Maybe the real question is not whether the rule was right or wrong. Maybe the real question is, what does a man do with the chance he is given? Right or wrong, deserved or not, Tom Brady got a second chance that night in the snow, and he did not waste a single second of it. He went on to win Super Bowl 36, then Super Bowl 38, then 39, then 49, then 51, then 53, then 55, 7 championships across 23 seasons. By any measure at all, the greatest quarterback who ever played the game. And it all leads back to that blizzard, that rule, That call, that extraordinary, maddening, impossible January night in Foxborough. The Snowball. The game that did not just decide a playoff matchup, the game that decided a decade. The game that changed the NFL rulebook forever. And the game that gave us, for better or worse, depending on which jersey you wear, the greatest dynasty in the history of professional football. Some rules exist to protect the game. Some rules exist to clarify it. And some rules, dormant for years, buried in the fine print, waiting in the dark. Some rules exist to change everything in a single frozen moment. The snow fell, the clock ran, and football was never quite the same again. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Gridiron Legends for more unforgettable football history.